I wanted to challenge myself to see if I could take an image that I found a lot of issues with and improve it into one that I would be happy putting out onto my social media. So please join me as we turn this image into this image. Hey guys, it's been a minute since I've done one of these videos, but I was going through some photos for this. What'll this be, the May release for Athletic Tier and Above on Patreon images, and came across this one, and I thought it would be fun to share the edit on this. I haven't done an edit on it yet, but I looked at it and was like, this is a striking image. I like his still face with the motion of the hands on the sides. It's pretty eye-catching, and at the same time, there are some things that I don't like about it, and I'm curious if I can make some tweaks to make it more pop a little bit more and just be more interesting. And like the yellows, I'm not really loving, and just want to play with that. One of the first things I noticed was that when I went in here, it is out of focus a little bit. It's either out of focus or it was shutter speed. I think it's about where the focus was. That's always a little bit difficult when I'm shooting in the tank between aperture speed and focus, just because a lot of movement happens. I'm messing with the lights, the model's moving, and it can just be a little hard to track. And I oscillate quite a bit between pretty low lighting as well as really bright flashes as well. This is a lot more low lighting, so probably a slower shutter speed as well. But yeah, so what I'm going to do here first, and by the way, I'm in Lightroom, but you can there are a lot of free editors as well that have essentially 90% plus of what Lightroom can do, and just not some of the more AI things that Creative does with Lightroom, which is really cool stuff, and at the same time, totally not necessary. So yeah, one of the first things I'm going to do is I'm just going to select a brush here, and I'm just going to see if I can make his eyes a little bit more detailed. I think eye detail is one of the first things you can do to make a picture more eye-catching and connect with people looking at it. So I'm just playing with a little bit of clarity stuff that's going to be messing with the contrast. And I can't truly make this a detailed shot, but I can make it pop a little bit more, and ideally bring down that contrast a little bit. Make it more in focus from out here. That might be a little too heavy. I'll say, I think it's true for everybody is you make the first edit and it's a little with a heavier hand than is ideal. And then what you do is you basically just walk away, and next time you come back to it, your first impression seeing it is usually the right one. It's like, oh my gosh, that is way too much contrast, way too much saturation, way too much whatever, and then you make changes based on that. So yeah, that's just a little bit too much. There we go. Good enough for now. The next thing I'm going to do is rotate the image, which I usually don't do to the very end, but I just want to see what his hands are going to look like. So I have the bars here straight up and down through his face here, and I want to see what his hands are going to look like. I am going to cut off that hand over there a little bit. I could go in Photoshop and try to expand out the image. It'd be a little difficult with the light reflections on that red side to do that. You know what? I'm going to go ahead and try doing that. So we're going to undo that. Bring it back to where we were. And let's save that for the very end where we rotate it. Yeah, now I think what I want to do is make it pop a little bit more. There are all sorts of philosophies for what makes an interesting photo, and I think a nice S-curve is one of the best things to do, which is just bringing down the darks here. Whoopsie. Bringing down the darks, bringing up the lights, and that's just going to add a lot more dimensionality to it. So you can already see here, like that just hits way harder, but then the contrast is way too extreme. So then I'm going to play with contrast, and that might be a little bit much. I think that's pretty good. I am going to bring the shadows down manually here a little bit without using the S-curve. It is essentially affecting the S-curve there, but you just have these simple controls on the right side to play with shadows, not blacks. That's what you can do down here, like actual 0-point black, but I'm not going to be messing with that. Just bring the shadows down a little more, and then I'm going to lighten up that contrast just a little bit. Yeah, there we go. Next up, I'm going to go into, I think, should I do red? I'm going to do the blue and yellow. So yellow is the one that I'm not a big fan of here. So what I'm going to do is, this is a light curve, and it's, well, I guess it's a color curve. If you're bending the light of yellow to blues here. And so what I want to do is just make it, I don't know where this is going, and that's kind of why I wanted to do this video, is like just come up with something fun and interesting and something that seems to have importance or eye-catchiness with the final image that's different than the initial one. So kind of moving away from that yellow and seeing if I can change that color a bit to something just a little bit more, it just fits the scene and the mood better than the yellows. So what I'm doing here, if you look to the right here, you can see what I'm doing is bending the light curve. So these are darks down here, lights up here, and this black behind it is showing me where all those blues and yellows are located along that light range there. So what I can do is, if I want, I can grab that yellow here, and that'll show up on that scale. Like, where is that yellow? I can bring up those blues and make it a little bit less yellow, and then could actually bring yellow back a little bit for some of the highlights. That's not impacting a lot, because as you can see, everything on this right side doesn't have any, it's not showing up on the picture, or very little, so it's not going to have a huge impact, but it does make a difference. Now what if I want his face to still be a little bit yellow? Where would that be? Okay, so I'm actually going to delete this point, so I have a little bit more play. See if I can bring that up. Yeah, it's not doing as much as I want. Yeah, it's kind of locked in there. That's okay. I'm going to go into the reds here and see if I can bring it down here. So I can desaturate his face there, so maybe that's what I want to do. Let's kind of make his face look a little bit more quote-unquote normal, but then around that, bring back up the colors where they were, and see if I can do that without making it look insane. That is the goal. I'm not liking that. When you bend too close together, that's where you get the absolutely crazy colors, and I think some of those colors are too close. Gosh, I wish I could bring that out more. What if I brought this back? Yikes. Nope. Wrong choices. Bad. Let's go back. Some interesting stuff, but not what I want. So we're back to here. Let's see, like, what if we take that away again? Oof. So yeah, now that I've seen different changes, I don't like where I started here. So I'm going to bring this back, grabbing the yellow here, pulling it up. I think what I'll do instead, because I do like that color in the water, and I like these purples here. I think what I might end up doing, let me just play with this a little bit. Oh, here we go. That makes him look a little bit more normal skin toned. I kind of dig that, but the water's not as yellow. We got some purple in there. Part of me wants to move this to Photoshop so I could edit the water separately from the body here, but at the same time, I kind of dig in this. I just want to take another brush, and I'm going to paint where it's a little more flesh toned. And if I get into the water a little bit, it's not a big deal, but I'm mainly just aiming for his skin. Yeah, this guy definitely in the athletic tier. This guy was pretty cut. Good attitude about it too. He talks about body care and just trying to stay healthy, which is pretty much where I'm at as a 38-year-old. Can't be yoked like him anymore. Gotta just focus on taking care of the body. And the bone density and all that stuff, it all matters as I'm getting older. Mainly just so I don't pull out my back when I put my kid in the car seat. That's the main goal. Or shoot a disc out of my spine. Okay, so now that's all highlighted. Oof, that's a little rough over here, but it's all highlighted red. It's not precise, but what I can do is pull the yellows out a little bit. So where I was bringing them down in the whites earlier, I'm bringing them higher on his skin tone here. That's pretty cool. You know what? I'm gonna just take a brush here and manually paint on the water. I don't do this very often, but it's definitely been done before on images I've done. It can just be a little while blending it in with the rest of the water here. So the red here is just to identify where I'm painting before I do any changes. Makes it pretty easy to see it. Make sure I get the hair there. And now here, I'm curious if I can make this a cooler color. Let's see. Cooler interesting and cooler in temperature as well. But just make that stand out as its own character a bit. Not that way. Too harsh this way. Just a little slapdash here. I'm gonna increase the contrast. It's so yellow. Why are you so yellow? Kind of like that, but I want it to be less dark. How do I want to do that? Just bring up the shadows a bit. Now what I'm feeling is that his face, it's too much contrast still, so I'm going to brighten that up a little bit. I do still like my highlights. I think it's almost like a cartoon with how extreme it is. Sometimes that's good, sometimes it's bad. Like I said earlier, there are different techniques and different approaches to photography. I do like the S-curve a lot, but sometimes it's just about pulling down the darks and not making the lights super pop, and it can be a little more two-dimensional, but can give a little bit more of a common, like kind of instant photo look. Also, pulling up the blacks can be really cool. I've done that more and more. I used to have a philosophy of like, try to create a more neutral image that other people can play with and edit, but I feel like I do enough edits that I can give myself a little bit of leeway, and actually, gosh, I kind of do like playing, lifting the blacks here. So give myself a little leeway to play with how I want to actually have the image look, and then just make sure there are plenty for other people to make their own edits. I am going to make that yellow. Why am I not seeing that? Okay. I almost want to manually color over it rather than just adjust the color, but I think what I'll do... Interesting. Play with the saturation here a little bit. Now, I think... You know what, let me lift the shadows a bit. Yeah. Now I'm going to pull this in. Is that still too much contrast? Okay. Good enough for now. We can refine it later. I'm going to move this into Photoshop now. And I am digging this. I'm glad I lifted the blacks, actually. I kind of like that. I think it makes this have a nice, unique look that pops. Let's see here. There are definitely some changes I want to make here as far as the image itself goes. One is, I've talked about it before, I don't like bubbles in my images. They just don't seem smooth. They don't give it like a good, pleasant feeling. Not universally true. They're not universally bad, but I just find too often I don't like the feeling they provide. I'm sorry I don't have a better description than that. So I'm using a tool here that oftentimes doesn't work well on water, but this is actually working pretty well here. Great. Usually I will lasso the bubbles and do a content-aware fill that just leaves less, I don't know what you call it, like jagginess, pixels around the edges, but this, apparently this shot in particular, it does actually work just fine. So I will be doing a lasso and content-aware fill in a second, but I want to do this first so that when it does the content-aware fill, it grabs onto those images without bubbles, or else I'll just be doing like 5 times the number of bubble erasers. So I'm going to try just its dumb version of it first. See how that goes, and just get rid of the edges of the float tank here. This isn't something you have to do if you're doing your own photo for your center, because you want people to see what kind of float tank they're going to be getting in and have that familiarity. I do this so that I can have this for anybody's float tank. And I definitely, oops, did I not do that right? Definitely believe that everybody should be doing their own photography. Hopefully I'll actually give a presentation at the conference, or a workshop, I should say, at the conference about doing float photography and the things you can do to photograph your float tank, your models, all that stuff. How does that look? Yeah, but there's some repeating bubbles here. Not digging it. You know, let's just lasso it, see if it does a better job on this spot. But it's hard to do photography for your float center over and over and over and over again, and keeping that variety. But it is good to have some shots that you can still use and be proud of, showing off your float tanks and people floating in them, showing what it looks like to actually have a body in there. And then you want supplemental stuff so that you can just continually have promos going on, and the perfect image of somebody looking at the camera and it catches people's eyes, or having joy or relaxation, just whatever fits exactly what you want. So I think it's nice to have a blend of the two. Yeah, I think that's all we want to do in Photoshop today. I'm just going to do a little bit of, I think this is towards the end of the shoot, I'm just going to clean up a little bit of the salt here and not worry too much about the texture, because I am kind of destroying technically the image here. Excuse me, oftentimes I'll do frequency separation, and it's a great way to remove blemishes, but keep the texture, get rid of acne, that kind of thing. Just the things that day of the shoot weren't how the model would want it. Take care of it. But I think with this particular image, there's not a lot of texture that I'm destroying here. I am going to remove that hair though. Yeah, I don't think that's too noticeable. Nice. All right. Now I'm going to save this and bring it back into Lightroom. All right, so we're back in Lightroom here, and let's see here. This is the previous version, before edits, got the bubbles, edges of the tank, all that. And then I've got it over here. With the edits, I'm not fully happy with what, first of all, the difference between screens is insane. It drives me nuts. I have my Mac that I'm working on here with Lightroom, and then I go into Photoshop on my second screen, and the colors look wildly different. I try to edit so that it'll look universally similar, but it's just a lesson in frustration, and I've learned this from different photo groups and editing groups, that this is just a common thing. Like, even if you do have your screen perfectly attuned, you're still sending it out into the wild to Android phones, iPhones, people looking at it in dark mode. What is it, where you raise the blacks on your phone, like just all these different changes, like yellow light or reducing blue light. That just create all these crazy different factors, and I will see my picture and just like, oh my gosh, that is not what I intended, and it's so annoying. Like, I try to really reduce greens in skin tones, and then I will look at a photo that somebody posts, and I see the greens, and it drives me insane. So it's my own personal hell, but hopefully I'm hitting the mark close enough that these things are still usable. Yeah, anywho. I am kind of curious if I messed with, so I raised the blacks. I'm just curious if I just add a little bit of blue in there, what that would do. And I kind of dig that, just a touch. And then highlights, if I brought a little yellow into that, what that would look like. It's kind of digging that, a little too green. Yeah. And then I think the other thing is this image is just kind of too dark. It's too intense. If I bring up that light a little bit more, it just has that pop. I probably use the term pop too much, but it's what I always think of when I'm trying to do, for the most part, what I'm trying to do with an image is just give it some pop, make it eye-catching. Stop that thumb scrolling so that they want to see the image, and then see whether, it's a sale or whatever it is you have going on. They get the gist. Cool. Digging it. Finally, I'm going to go into some saturation stuff here and just see if I want to boost the contrast. Sometimes I think I want to boost it, and then I realize actually if I drop it down, that makes it look way cooler or brings out some other stuff better. Like actually I'm thinking reducing these oranges might be better because the purple's on his face. Ooh, bringing out the water. The purple's in the upper right there. See that change? It just kind of gives it... I do kind of love crazy saturation photography in general. I think it's fun. I like my senses being overwrought with all the color, and I do lean towards that on a personal aesthetic. I try to avoid always doing that with my own work, but yeah, this is cool. I'm not sure I have to mess with this saturation much on this one. I'll just keep it right about there. And then luminance is another interesting one where just, I have to look up the definition. There's so much stuff to understand when it comes to editing in Lightroom and all these different softwares. But luminance increases the white or how many pixels per space of a particular color. And can really help you make, I guess probably if I grab this orange, see on his chest there, I can make that glow a little bit more, make it pop a little bit more. And it's easy to overdo. I think I'll bring that up a little bit. And I think bring the face down. I think it makes it look a little more in the shadows, mysterious. And I think that's cool. And then finally, I'm still a little iffy on the contrast here. I think I like the contrast in most of the photo, but on his face, it's just too much. Let's bring it down, especially on the eyes there, because I did some work on that to make it look more in focus. Do not auto mask, just paint it. There we go. And now let's play the contrast just on his face. Yeah, just bring it down a skosh. It's all good. But do I want his... I think I want to bring that saturation back on those oranges. Just a wee bit. We'll just drop it down less. Cool. Also, fun things that you can do is just playing with the hues of particular colors, dragging them around, pulling them around, seeing what may or may not work. Yeah, I am going to pull that down just so those purples pop a little bit more. Did I say it again? Did I say it pops? Cool. I think this is a very unique image to what I usually do. I really like shooting with clean lights with just a little bit of fill on one side, or a clean flash with a blue or a red on the side just to give it a little bit of character and tinge. But then I also really enjoy playing with two lights on either side of somebody and messing with that. But this is even with that style, going with a red, reddish orange and a yellow is pretty unique to me for my style. So this is what I ended up with here, but still need to... Oh, you know what? Not done just yet. We're gonna... Shoot, that's right. I need to do this in Photoshop. Okay. Darn it. We're bouncing back to Photoshop. Okay, we are back to Photoshop, and there's just one more thing I wanted to do, which is expand out the image, especially on this side, so that I can do a little bit more rotation and not lose out. So let's see here. What can we do? I think first I'm just... Oh, accept that expansion there. That crop. I'm just going to take the stamp tool. I'm using a Wacom tablet here. And I'm just going to grab this and just extend it out. Doesn't have to be perfect at all, not a big deal. Oof, I thought that was rough. And then I'm going to do the same over here. And then I'm going to... Oh, did that not get all the way? Let's do that again. Grab the lasso tool, go along here. Sometimes it's real rough with those light reflections, doesn't know what to do with those. I don't blame it. Shooting in water is not something they should be spending a lot of time investing in for their algorithms. Again, I'm going to try, oops, not feather. I'm going to try doing the simple content aware fill, see how that goes. Huh, that is not too shabby. Huh, I am not disappointed. And healing brush, couldn't think of the name of it earlier. I'm going to take that healing brush, which is similar to the stamp tool, but it also tries to stitch together the edges so that it matches what you've done. Yeah, cool. That ain't too shabby. I'm not going to be able to extend his hands. I'm not that adept at Photoshop, but I'm just going to do another lasso tool here and extend out the color. I think that's all I needed to do for the, oh, funny. For the rotation, I do need to stamp that out a little bit further. White edges, it's going to think white is actually part of it and try to mix that into the image. I need to fake something there and then it'll fill in. I think that's pretty good, actually. Kind of pleased with that. So that should allow me to rotate the image, take more space in the upper left here with that rotation. I don't think I'm missing anything, but you know what, just in case, don't think this should happen, but I'm just going to paint up here and lasso this puppy in. And the simple content aware fill has been really good. There's a more complicated one where you can manually adjust that is nice and powerful, really able to modify it, but today, unnecessary. Cool beans. So now I think what I'll do is great. So I do have to bring it in. There we go. Oops, I can take a few more pixels out. So I'm still have to lose his hand. Ugh, come on, Photoshop, quit auto-grabbing. But I think we have a pretty good rotation. There we go. Cool. Haha, almost. Bringing it down. Quit doing your auto grab. Cool beans. I think we're done. Now he is straight up and down. That's something I wanted. I wanted to get as much movement of the hands as possible in the shot. I think that's great. So again, this isn't like, I wouldn't consider this my best photograph I've ever taken. It wasn't in focus. It had yellows in there that I wasn't pleased with, but I wanted to see if I could play with it, bend it, and make it into something that I think is cool and worthwhile. And so I think I've arrived there, and let's see if we can hop back and forth between the original shot and this one here, which just has a little bit more kick to it. Has space where you can add some text at the bottom if you wanted to. I think this also leaves room with like Instagram filters. You can put something on this one and it'll still have, I think it's okay to do that. Sometimes I think there are images I'm like, oh gosh, the Instagram filters on this kind of make it look yuckier. This one I think you could play with different saturations and different modes that would still make it look pretty cool. So yeah, thanks for joining me. And let's see here. This one will be released again if you sign up before the end of this month. So not a whole lot of time if you want this shot. I'll try to include a few final images of different varieties coming from this set. But yeah, thanks for joining me.